The Bible. It's 66 books of history, stories, letters, and poetry that fit together to form God's one big story. The epic adventure of how He created us and loves us so much that He made a way to rescue us. As we travel through the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, we discover people who met God and found their lives changed forever. And now for an amazing story, inspired by the book of Luke, chapter 24, verses 13 through 35.
Have you ever thought that you knew everything? Ever thought that you had something completely figured out, only to have your world completely turned upside down when you realized you didn't know nearly as much as you thought you did? This month, we're talking all about the Easter story and humility. And remember, humility is putting others ahead of what you think you deserve. Today, we're talking about there was two men walking on the way to Emmaus. And another man approached them on the road and said, "What are you guys talking about?" Of course, what they were talking about was everything that had happened in the past 3 days. Jesus' death, Jesus' arrest, Jesus' crucifixion, and how they had lost all hope. And then they said, "But we had hoped that He was going to be the one to set us free." See, they were sad because they had lost their teacher and they had lost their great leader. But the reason they were truly sad was because they had lost hope. They were looking for a warrior king who would destroy his enemies. You see, just like many people at the time, they were tired of being oppressed. They longed for another Moses that would come and lead them out of their slavery. But then, Jesus died. And warrior kings don't die, right? Messiahs, prophets, they don't die. So then they had lost all hope. They had believed that Jesus was the one that was going to come and set them free. But then when they died, they believed that it was just back to the drawing board. Jesus said, "Why have you lost hope? Don't you know that this is always how it meant to be?" Jesus went to explain the entire Old Testament to these two people and how it all lines up and it all comes together, one big story, and how this is the climax of the story. They don't need to lose hope. They invited Jesus into their home for supper. And as they sat down, and as Jesus began to break the bread, they realized who this man was. This man was Jesus. And as they realized this, they looked back and He was gone. Jesus had vanished. And they ran back to Jerusalem to tell everyone just what had happened. Jesus is alive, and they spoke to Him. See, they didn't recognize Jesus as the Messiah at first because they were so caught up on looking for this warrior king who would destroy His enemies. But they thought they knew everything, but they didn't. Jesus came as a servant king who would die for His enemies. They got it backwards. They got it upside down. And Jesus showed them just how upside down they got it.
Okay, so here's the bottom line. What have you discovered about God that surprised you? When my cousins were really little, they'd always ask the question, why? Why do we have to do that? Why do we have to wear shoes? Why can't we stay up late? Why do we have to eat that? And honestly, that question is so important to brain development. You see, the more we ask, the more we learn, and we definitely have a lot to learn. You may feel like you know a lot, but there's always more to learn. When we open up to asking questions, we are realizing that there's so much more to discover that we just don't know. Remember, humility is putting others first by giving up what you think you deserve. In Philippians chapter 2, verse 3, it says, "Don't do anything only to get ahead. Don't do it because you are proud. Instead, be humble. Value others more than you value yourself." Put others first by admitting that you may not know everything about everything. We have a lot of ways we can discover God. We can read His Word by reading the Bible. We can talk to others like I do. We do a FaceTime call every Thursday night for my small group. And you can also talk to God directly and ask Him. I challenge you this week to write why somewhere and place it in your room. That way you see it every day and it's prompting you to take some time and think and to discover more about God, either from reading your Bible, talking to others, or talking to Him.